In this video, we're going to do another historic explosives charge. We're going to go back to World War II. I mentioned in the U.S. satchel charge video that during World War II, the U.S. military used the M37 satchel charge, which had 8 pounds of TNT. Other militaries, they needed bulk charges also. In the German military, a very common thing that they used was the grenade bundle, or geballte Ladung, bundled charge or baled charge. The core of this was the M24 Stick Grenade, which was the evolved version of the potato masher or stick grenade used by the German military in World War I. If you look at the pictures, the ones in World War I had larger heads on them, and it appeared that they had longer handles on them also. It went through a few different evolutions during the interwar years. By the time of World War II, it was the M24 that was the standard version that was being issued out, at least in the beginning of the war. They continued to evolve the grenades through the war, and that's when you ended up with the egg grenade and that type of stuff, which was essentially a copy of what was being used by the Allies against the German military. Now, some people have asked questions, why did the Germans go with the stick grenade during World War II when everyone else was using the smaller, more compact ones that could be pulled out of a pouch, out of a bag, and thrown easily? Example would be like this U.S. pineapple grenade, or British Mills bomb, or the Russian, I think at the beginning of the war, was like an F1 or something like that, which was another pineapple grenade style grenade with a Russian style fuse on it. The reason the German military used the stick grenade is it had a farther throwing distance than the smaller grenades used by the Allies. One of these could be thrown about 15 yards accurately, reliably. A stick grenade could be thrown around 35 yards, so you have over twice the distance. Now, there is a little bit of conflict. I came across that the Germans realized that the stick grenade did not produce as much fragmentation as the Allies' versions. So in 1944 or 42, they came out with a metal sleeve that went over the charge on the grenade to give it more fragmentation. The Germans noticed that problem back in World War I, and they came up with the sleeves back then too. So it wasn't just created in 42 because of lackluster performance on the battlefield. They were already in the inventory. They were already aware of it. There were World War I veterans serving in the Wehrmacht in World War II. So I'll just put that out there. Now, I do not have a giant pile of training M24 stick grenades laying around, so I had to simulate using some cans here. Now, the average grenade bundle that's mentioned in German training literature and that stuff, typically says using 4 to 6 heads from other grenades, but you could put on as many as you needed. Obviously, the limit was really 6. Each one of the heads contained about 6 ounces of TNT. So when you're making a bundle, you got 6 heads. You're going to have at least 42 ounces of explosive in that, so 3 pounds of explosives. That's going to cut down on the distance you could reliably toss one of these. Now, when did they first start using these? I don't know. I know it's earlier in the war. I can't tell you if they started using them before the war, if they started using them in 39 after experiences against the Polish, if they started using them in 40 after dealing with the Western Allies in France, or if they started using them in 41 after coming across Russian tanks. I don't know. But you will come across this charge in a lot of pictures of World War II, especially later in the war. I know it appears in a German training film on anti-tank warfare, Männer gegen Panzer, Men Against Tanks, showing what was available to the average infantry soldier for use against enemy tanks. This appears in there, and if I remember correctly, the charge that is used, they used twine like I did for holding all the heads together around the one fused head in the center. But it actually says in German training literature they were supposed to use rope, they were supposed to use cloth, they were supposed to use wire to bundle them together. I came across one picture where it looks like a almost manufactured type of strap that went around this. It was metal, and you could see the end of it was a piece of wire. So you had the strap going around, the thinner piece of metal going around, you had the wire which went across to the other piece, and then you tied it off, pulling that little, you know, hose clamps type thing, if you want to think of it like that, together to hold all the bundle together. Now the standard fuse on the M24 was 5 seconds, just like pretty much every other grenade. 5 seconds seems to be pretty common, at least in Western militaries. In COM-block countries, the fuses range from 1 second to typically 3 seconds. Sometimes they went over to 5, but 3 seconds was kind of your reliable or more reliable time on COM-block grenades. So I threw this together, obviously, using cans I had available, which would have been mushroom and whatever else. But it took me a little while to gather up enough cans for this. If you look for one of these online, the actual ones for like reenactment and that stuff, if you can find them for sale, the ones that have the one, you know, quote-unquote fused looking M24 in the center with 6 M24 heads around it, they were selling for around $100 a piece. So if you're a reenactor looking at this, wondering where can I get a hold of one, it ain't going to be cheap. Not too many people do them. You'd almost be better off assembling it yourself somehow. Now, for the militia, you're probably looking at this wondering, well, why are you showing this to us? This is a grenade that hasn't been produced in 70 years. They aren't out there on the world scene or anything like that. True. But it's not beyond the abilities of someone to make inside a workshop. You just got a simple wooden handle, which would be drilled out. The Germans had a pull fuse in it, a friction fuse. The cap was down here. So you'd have your little igniter here, the cap, which would go down into the explosive filler. You had the pull string coming through. They had a little plastic ball on here that would fall out of the handle so that you could grab it easily, even with a glove. Pull the pull string to ignite the fuse, start it burning, and then when this charge would go off, it would set off all the others. As you see, something could be done like this using simple mushroom cans or your simple sea ration style cans, little bunt cans, as the head. Tie them all together and that stuff. The one that really just needs to be fused is the one in the center, because of sympathetic detonation, the ones around it would go off. Stick grenades gives you longer range. This type of thing would actually be easier to produce, I think, than the cast style for a guerilla. I do know that stick grenades were manufactured by the Viet Cong in the jungle inside their workshops. Most of theirs had shorter handles that were about yay long, say about 6 inches or so, just long enough to fit inside the hand. So if they could do it in the middle of a jungle, someone could do it inside a workshop on a farm or something, or inside a metal shop somewhere. Handles can be manufactured pretty quickly, pretty easily from a tree limb. You know, you could go through, whittle it down or whatever, get the size you need and all that stuff. You know, it's not beyond the realm of being done by your average person. It wouldn't be all that hard. Would something like this work against a modern tank? Hell no. Would it breach the armor on, say, a BMP or a Bradley? I'm guessing if it's put in the correct location and the blast is confined, it would. If it's just tossed out on the top with nothing over it to focus the blast downward, I'm going to say probably not. Would it work inside something lighter like a gun truck or something like that? Yeah, I think it probably would. I think it would breach the armor on a gun truck. And obviously you could still use it against fortifications and that stuff too, so it's still usable in that type of mission also. So I think I've covered all the information that would help you out. I will say, just like with all the other ordnance type videos I show you, stuff from history, do not manufacture one of these at home. At least a live example. If you want to manufacture one for training, for reenactment events, historic living events, that type of thing, hey, yeah, go ahead. Because you're not going to use actual ordnance inside it, not going to use actual explosive filler and stuff. But yeah, do not make a live example of this unless the country's invaded, you know, aliens have shown up, you know, there's a civil war or whatever type things, because you will get caught, you will get found out, you will get sent to prison for an extremely long time. So that's my little disclaimer. If any of you can think of something like this from history, you know, that I haven't covered yet, go ahead, put it inside the comments and I can try looking up some basic information on it, see if I could throw together a little makeshift example and find some of the historical info for you. Give you an idea of maybe how it was manufactured, what it was made from, what was its purpose. That I got no issue with that. Obviously, I can't cover something like chemical weapons or biological weapons or radiological nuclear type weapons. But simple explosive charges like this, yeah, I can give you some information. So, now for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot Militia movements, always remember, essayons.